You ever see something that looks right on the outside, but something in you know it's off? That's what the Tower of Babel really is. Because when most people hear this story, they think it's about God punishing people for building something too big. But what if that's not what's happening at all? What if this story is actually about identity, control, and what happens when we try to build a life without being aligned? Welcome back to Skin Deep, a sacred space where we peel back the layers, speak the unspeakable, and remember who we were before the world told us who to be. I am Kiara Charles, and today we're walking through Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel, not just as a story, but as a mirror. If you want to read this for yourself, you can find it in Genesis 11, verses 1 through 9. At this point, everyone on the earth speaks the same language. There's full unity, no confusion, no division. People come together and decide to build a city and a tower. And the goal is very clear. Let us make a name for ourselves so that we won't be scattered. So they start building. And then the text says, God comes down, looks at what they're doing, and says that because they are one people with one language, nothing that they plan will be impossible for them. So what does God do? He confuses their language. They can no longer understand each other, and they end up being scattered anyway. That's the story. And if I'm being honest, this story hit me personally. There was a season in my life where I was working at an organization, and on the outside, it looked right. I was in management, I was trusted, I was helping people, I was making an impact. It looked like purpose, but internally, I was drowning. Because the more I grew in that role, the further I got from actually serving the community, which is what I cared about in the first place. So eventually, I wasn't going to work with intention anymore. I was just going to go. And that drained me every single day. And if I'm really being honest, the thing that I was most afraid of was this. If this didn't work out, I might be too burnt out to try anything else. So, like the people in Babel, I started trying to hold it all together. I became strategic. I became consistent. I did everything I was supposed to do, not realizing that underneath all of that was fear. And then there was this deeper layer. I felt like I had to make a name for myself because I grew up in an environment where there was pressure to be better. But I hadn't even found my own baseline yet. So I was chasing validation from people who couldn't even see the weight of what I was carrying. They saw the title, they saw the output, but they didn't see the disconnect. And when I really sat with it, I realized it wasn't just about maintaining a job. I was maintaining a version of myself that was created through survival. Because the truth is, I didn't even start that job from alignment. I started it because I needed stability. I had just had a newborn and I needed money. So even though I did all the right things, The foundation was never fully aligned. And I could feel that. I just didn't trust it yet. And then the moment came, something that I had been working toward, and I was passed over for someone less qualified. And not only that, I was still expected to do the brunt and carry the brunt of the work. And in that moment, something clicked for me. Not emotionally, but internally. I realized if God allowed that door to close, then the feeling that I had been ignoring this whole time was actually truth. This wasn't rejection. This was redirection. And I had a choice. Keep building in something that looked stable but wasn't aligned, or trust what I felt, even if that meant letting go. So I chose to surrender. I walked away, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that making a name for myself outside of alignment with God was something I was no longer willing to risk. And when I look back on it, I had to be real with myself. I thought I was being disciplined. I thought I was being consistent. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. But the truth was, I was operating from imposter syndrome. I was afraid of my own purpose. And I was afraid of my own power. And that's when it clicked for me. This wasn't just about a job. This was about how I build when I'm not fully aligned. And when I look back at Babel, they were doing the same thing. This story shows us how we're wired. We are built for unity. When people come together with a shared language and vision, there is almost no limit to what can be created. But we are also wired to seek identity. Let us make a name for ourselves. That's human nature. We want to matter. We want to feel established. We want to try to control outcomes when we feel uncertain, lest we be scattered. That's fear. So what do? They build something to prevent a feeling. And here's the part that comes full circle. The very thing that they were trying to prevent is exactly what happened anyway. They said, let us build so that we won't be scattered. And then they were scattered. And we do the same thing. We try to hold things together. And in the process, we create the very outcome we were trying to avoid. Because fear-based building doesn't remove the outcome. It just delays it. And this is the part that's harder to see. Misalignment doesn't always feel wrong. Sometimes it feels like progress. Sometimes it looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks like purpose. But internally, there's a disconnect. And that's where people stay the longest. Because you're not failing. You're functioning. You're building, but you're not aligned. So the question isn't just, is this working? It's, is this aligned? And when you really see that, you stop asking, why would God stop them? And you start asking, what did God see that they didn't? So what did God see that they didn't? God never said the building was the problem. He acknowledged their power. He said, nothing would be impossible. So the issue isn't ability, it's alignment. And God is always responding to alignment. God saw unity rooted in fear, collaboration driven by control, identity built outside of truth. So he didn't step in because they were strong. He stepped in because they were strong in the wrong direction. And instead of destroying them, he disrupted what they were building. Because if he allowed it to continue, they would have built something that took them further away from alignment. And sometimes what feels like interruption is actually protection. So now the question becomes, where in your life are you building something that looks right on the outside, but underneath it, it's being driven by fear? Is it working or is it a lie? Because those are not the same things. This story isn't about a tower. It's about posture. So instead of just thinking about this story, locate yourself in it. What are you building right now? Why are you building it? What are you trying to prove? If it didn't work, what would that mean about you? Are you building from identity or for identity? Check the foundation. At the end of the day, God didn't interrupt Babel because they were building. He interrupted it because of what they believed about themselves while they were building. And that's the part that matters. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay rooted, stay aligned, and stay skin deep.